One of the biggest things that people have been reaching out to me for the Elite Recruiter podcast is an entire episode talking about business development and winning more business in 2023, keeping your pipeline full and making sure that you're making as much money as possible. I have my special guest with me, Clark Willcox, to talk about all of that. So Clark, definitely welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be on here.
So before we get started and do a deep dive into business development, making money, and winning new work, how did you even end up in this wonderful world of recruiting?
Yeah, it's I kind of call recruiting the land of misfits, and I'm no different. Maybe I'm just projecting there, but back in 2013, I was kind of just drifting away in Los Angeles doing third-party telecom sales and just getting crushed, right? Trying to sell Verizon, Time Warner, all those types of services to companies, door to door on businesses, and getting clients, everything else. But then the install process on the back end, right, with those big companies was always a nightmare. I was like, man, this is brutal. I was like, there's got to be a better way, or something else out there for me. But it was a great learning experience, and so I had a friend who was in sales help me put together a resume, which I had never really done up to that point, and put it on Career Builder. And I had a recruiter from Aerotech call me about a role that they were working on, and we just had a great conversation. The role wasn't for me, but in just having a conversation, he's like, you ever thought about being a recruiter? I was like, I don't know what that is. Tell me. And so he kind of broke it down. I still didn't quite understand what they do or what they were doing. But I was like, sure, I'll interview. And so one thing led to another, and they hired me on a few weeks later. And I started recruiting at Airtech for skilled trades, light industrial out in the Los Angeles area. And it just, from day one, it just clicked. So that's how I got into it.
And then you went from recruiter to account manager, right?
Yeah, I got promoted about 8 months, which was pretty good for kind of everyone at Aerotech starts as a recruiter, and then you kind of work up from there. It just clicked, and but I knew I wanted to get back into sales, and so I got in the account management role. And about 8 months later, I had a great manager myself, and was just making placements and got my spread up pretty quick to 10K within 5 months, which was pretty solid for a new recruiter, and then just got into sales. Yeah.
That's a great jump, 10 months. I think I was there for like 2.5 years and stayed in the recruiter seat.
Yeah. It was, started in June, got promoted in March, and then that's when the real fun began, is getting into sales.
And now you are the founder of the Digital Recruiter.
Yep. Yeah, started the Digital Recruiter around September 2021. I'd worked with a LinkedIn outreach agency. I guess you had on Stephen Perchikoff, built that agency, and him and I worked with him to build out the recruiting wing of the Digital Recruiter. I saw what he was doing. He was doing amazing work with SaaS companies and coaches, consultants, and with my background in recruiting, I was like, let's make this happen. So we started working with agencies and doing a lot of being in LinkedIn for them. And I saw the issue was there wasn't a recruiting foundation for a lot of these recruiters out in the market. And I was like, well, I got this training at Aerotech. I think I see a lot of the problems to help them get the most out of this. So I was like, hey, Steve, I'm going to go kind of build this thing and focus on the recruiting training. He's like, go for it. And so that's kind of how I got started in Digital Recruiter. So it's a blend of, let's get the automation, the marketing, all that dialed in, the digital systems, but let's also build the recruiting and sales foundation as well.
And I know, like, when it comes down to the sales side of the house, that is one of the biggest things that, you know, every single firm, every single company, every single recruiter, you have to do. Like it's, you got the fun side of the recruiting, and then the fun side should also be sales too. But most people don't think of it that way. Yeah. So let's take a few steps back. Now, what is the order of operations for actually getting new business?
I've been using this terminology more. I love the order of operations because there are so many things you can do every day as a recruiter and in sales, right? But it's like, what should you be doing and when, right? Like, that's really what we got to figure out. And what I preach is figure out who you are and who you want to be first in the market and to business, to companies, right? Like, you got to figure out what do you want to excel at? What do you want to be known for? What problems do you want to solve? And then once you understand that, right? And there's a whole method of the madness of figuring out like what that should be, given that how long you've been recruiting, what your background, what industries you might be coming from, right? Kind of how to blend that together. But you gotta be clear to yourself to be able to be clear to your market, because they have to know quickly, and sometimes in 3 seconds, what exact problems that you solve and if it's relevant to them, right? So that's the foundation of everything we teach in our program. Is like, what is your business? Who are you? What are you about in the business recruiting world? Because then we can start to really articulate that in marketing and sales and messaging and building out, a prospecting business development plan. So that's the first step. And then from there, you can kind of figure out, okay, well, where is your market, right? We got to be where your market is and get the right tools and, and just get in front of them consistently. So that's kind of where I would start with the order of operations.
Okay. And you talked about, figuring your story out. Like, how do you actually, like, if you've never done that, how do you figure out your story and own your story?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it can be so easy to figure out maybe someone else's story or learn about someone else or ask questions about, right? We're recruiters, right? Like, oh, what do you do? What's the job? What ideal role are you looking for? Like looking for next, right? It's easy to do it to everyone else, but then we got to do it for ourselves, because that's where people that don't know us, that's what they're looking to find out, right? Like, who are you? Right? Like, why should I work with you? Why should I hire you? Why should I give you a $30,000 check, right? To find someone, like, you, so it just starts with what skill sets, like what kind of candidates do you like talking to, right? What roles do you like working on, right? What kind of is in your current and in your lane when, if you like placing SDRs, right? Focus on that, right? Why do you like placing those roles, right? Just articulate it, write it down, record some voice memos. Like, and just really fall in love with, it's kind of sound weird, but with that process to figure out like what drives you, because recruiting is a grind. So you might as well pick the grind that you're okay with, in a sense, right? And I see a lot of recruiters working on stuff they hate working on. I'm like, well, why? Like, it's just you. There are so many roles, so many industries. Like, you kind of have your pick of the litter, in a sense. I think recruiters get themselves stuck where it's like, I have to be a certain thing. I'm like, why? All right, what do you want to be first? And it can go from, if you're a project engineer, you want to place more project engineers, well, do that, and people are going to believe you. Yeah, you know the role, like the industry. Like, I'll work with you as a recruiter because you get it. So lean into it. You're not stuck with that forever, but it's just a great starting point, right? If you're just trying to create momentum, just lean into your strengths, right? And just identifying those is a key first step, and it can be hard, and you can ask around, right? One of the questions I asked 2015, I asked a friend, like, what in the work, like when I was thinking about going off on my own, like, what would you hire me for, right? Like, what kind of roles would you, and just gauge your network and your friends and all that, like, and that might be a helpful way to kind of brainstorm some ideas and kind of get going in the right direction.
I absolutely love that because, like, it's one of the biggest things that when I'm chatting with other recruiters out there is like, we're so good at dissecting a role, a company, an onboarding call, a candidate, but we also don't understand like how strong we are and like the value that we've brought to the table. And like, I've had to like time and time again just chat with recruiters. I'm like, hey, think about this. At least in the GovCon side of the house,
Yeah.
There's $500 million programs, $35 million programs. If those don't get staffed up, it could be a national security issue. The company completely loses any future work within the Department of Defense. And I'm like, if you're the sole recruiter that helped staff a $125 million program, own that. You brought that value to the table. So I absolutely love what you're talking about owning your story.
It, it's critical. And I think that's one of the things I just saw in the LinkedIn and the content and the posting and talking to so many recruiters over the last 3 years. I mean, hundreds by now, if not thousands. And it's just, they know, like, not understand the value they bring to a company, right? Like, people are everything in a company. Pretty much everyone agrees on that, right? You got to have the right people. So if you're the ones making the match and finding the right people, you have an integral piece to that. And companies can be so nonchalant about, oh, we have a couple agencies or we have recruiters working on it. They don't really take the hiring process seriously, which recruiters we all see, right? There's plenty of complaints about that on LinkedIn and social media, right? Company won't do this, they won't give me feedback. But part of that is because you're not respecting what you bring to the table when you're, kind of talk about like that whole self-worth and owning it. It's it's true, right? Without getting too woo woo, like it's very real. Like you buy and work with people that have confidence in what they do, and really understanding like you're bringing something to the table, like you're justifying your fee because of all those conversations you're having. You know the market, like you know the candidates. They're confiding in you what they won't tell a company and all that. Like that's powerful. Like that's a huge leverage point, and just really recognizing the value of great recruiting, right? You might not be there right in that moment, but you have to know what you're reaching to and what companies are paying for. So you have something to attain to, right? Versus just looking at a commission check or being like, well, I got a LinkedIn account, so I'm a recruiter. It's like, well, that's step one, right? But it's like, what does the peak look like, right? So, and just reverse engineering that, and a big part of that is like, what do clients expect from an agency, and what's their current experience typically like, have been with an agency already, and how do I stand apart from that?
Okay, so we've got owning your story.
Yeah.
What's the next step into breaking new accounts and getting more business?
Owning your store, get where your market is, right? Like, you can't fish in the desert, in a sense. And so, like, and that's always what's interesting. I had a agency I talked to last week that's like, why do you focus on LinkedIn? I'm like, well, where are your clients and candidates? Well, they're on LinkedIn. Well, that's why I focus on LinkedIn because that's where the candidates are, right? And people pay for these LinkedIn recruiter subscriptions and six figures and seven figures a year. So you're stuck on LinkedIn in a sense, right? If you're paying for those tools, but you got to get the most out of it, right? You got to absolutely, and not that you can't get candidates from job boards, email, cold calls, like all those things can work, but go where your market is, right? And for most people, if they hone in on a specialty, your candidate and client pool is active on LinkedIn. That's where they're posting jobs. That's where they're looking for work, right? So it's like hiring managers got to go look and check for the applicants. They're checking the feed. Candidates are looking to apply to jobs there, right? There's like 14 million plus jobs posted on LinkedIn at any given time. So like just go where they are and own it. Like that's the next step.
Awesome. And after that, like, what else would you advise?
LinkedIn profile, right? If we talk about, you figure out who you are, who you serve, what problems you solve, make it clear on your LinkedIn profile, your headline, make everything look professional, your banner, your headshot, profile picture, your about section, right? Talk about the wins that you've had, right? If you don't have wins necessarily yet, you can talk about your story, why you got into recruiting. Wins don't just have to be recruiting placements, right? It could be if you've built out teams or done internal hiring or kind of however you got in there. If you're a new recruiter with an agency, leverage the agency wins that you've had, right? Put them on there and people want to work with winners too, right? They pay winners. So I see so many profiles have no mention of success stories of that the recruiters have had. And it kind of goes into what we talked about, right? You work on a $125 million project and you're that recruiter. Well, say that. Like, right? A testimonial and a win doesn't have to be a quote from a past client or candidate. You don't have to give away their name. You can just talk about stuff that you've actually worked on, right? That's huge. And I've seen adding that to the profile add six figures in new business within 3 months, right? For a candidate, for recruiters, just because they talked about what they've done well already.
Yeah, no, I've actually seen a few of your clients talk about that, like the business that they've been winning based on the structure of how you've been teaching them how to make their LinkedIn posts, like a little
Yeah.
bit of selling.
Yeah, there's so much more to it, but that's just an easy starting place, right? To
Mm-hmm.
go with it, and it just again, it's order of operations. You're layering everything on. Start with the profile, right? Make it easier for people to say yes to connect with you, to reply to you, right? Because that's a huge concern, right? How do I improve my connection and response rate? Well, you know, fix the profile, right? Make it clear, and you don't have to do all the explaining on a phone call. The profile can do the work for you. And I always tell people that, like, let the profile take care of most of your messaging, right? And then the
I
messaging can
was
be conversational. Yeah.
where I had a recent guest on the podcast, and he's had his own executive recruiting firm for 25 years.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a website.
And
Everything is his entire landing page is his LinkedIn profile.
I say that all the time. I think I actually listened to that podcast and I kept nodding my head at everything he was saying. It was great because you don't need the website. You don't need a $5,000-$10,000 website to be a great recruiter. You just need to be where your market is, which is LinkedIn. And you just got to show them what problem you solve, like what hiring problems you solve, right? And how you solved it before. And that's it. I mean, I created my website for like $37 a year and a half ago. It's still running. It's not great, right? We're redoing the whole thing now, but I built the business without it. And then I've talked to tons of recruiters and helped tons of recruiters build up their agencies without either a website, or it's all janky and it doesn't, it doesn't give a clear picture of who they are. And the clients don't care.
If you want a good laugh, like we've done well over 7 figures in our business, and our website, my wife actually made while drinking champagne on during one episode of The Bachelorette.
That's, I mean, it's a great Mad Lib, but it goes to show it doesn't, and you're killing it, right? It doesn't matter, and it's easy to get all caught up with the aesthetics of everything and recruiting. But again, it goes back, if you don't know the why and the problems that you solve, right? Like that's what clients care about. That's what they pay money for, is for people that solve problems quicker and better than they can solve them themselves. Like that's what people care about. Yeah.
And flipping gears. So 2021, 2022, I don't want to say it was easy, like getting a new business, but 2023 in a lot of industries is a completely different world. And I hate to say this, it is the year where we have to get back to work.
I'm loving it. Yeah. I love this. It's tough for a lot of people, and I get that. And I feel for a lot of people, but it was kind of like it was a facade the last couple of years, right? So it was a lot of job orders, but you really saw who actually closed business and who realized like getting contracts is one thing in recruiting, but closing business is a whole other deal. Even if you're on retained, right? Because you're only getting a portion on retainer, you're not getting the whole thing. You still got to qualify job orders. You still got to build relationships. You still got to get out in front of your market every single day. Like this year is revealing who has the good habits and who doesn't. And the ones that don't and know that they're kind of lucky the last couple of years, or and luck, you can earn your own luck, right? In a sense. So I'm not taking anything away from those recruiters that did really well, but you got to be realistic of, okay, I just hit the tide at the right moment. And, I got to put the cash away when the getting is good. And then I got to go actually fix the systems and understand like what I was doing well, what needs improvement, how to leverage the success of the last couple of years. Because getting referral business, and I knew a friend and this friend, and, we build $1 million with them, like that's great. But that's a whole different ballgame where it's like convincing someone that doesn't know you how to get them to pay you, right? And pay those fees. And so you can leverage all the work of the last couple of years to build a great pipeline this year. And that's what I see the ones that are making it through. That's what they're doing. Like they're keeping everything lean, but they're putting in the work every single day, and they're leveraging all the opportunities the last couple of years gave them to build out new business, right? And they're not just throwing their hands up and giving up.
Now, when you talk about doing the work, what do you actually mean?
Yeah, to simplify it, I was telling everyone in the program, like the 3 C's, right? It's every day I need to be connecting with people. Every day I need to be posting content. And every day I need to be on the phones, right? So if I'm not doing those things, like something's wrong, right? Those are the simplest 3 C's. And so if you're doing outreach and connecting and have messaging going every day, if you're posting every day and really being relevant to your market, and you're on the phones every day, like that's a start, right? That can fill up a lot of your day. And then it's landing on everything, and it's auditing your work, right? I think it's just having that humility and evaluating the conversations and how to get more out of every single call. And just, you got to work hard. You got to work smart. If you have systems that free up a lot of your time, well, go build something else, right? If you've mastered LinkedIn, get good at an ATS system, or start doing more out email, or start leveraging your strategy to do more like cold or warm calls, right? Or like expand to another vertical. Like there's always something that you can be doing in a sense, and don't make excuses. In a sense, like if something's not working, like fix it, like fail fast and test everything and find what works, throw away what doesn't, and just keep going, right? Like there's plenty that can be done every day in recruiting. Yeah.
So one of the things I do love about like your content and that kind of stuff is you've gotten very good at copywriting. And I feel like copywriting is a thing that most recruiters, I don't want to say haven't specialized in, or I should really say good copywriting is something most recruiters haven't learned. And I know most recruiters are still using the same exact email template that was made in 1980 that candidates hate and clients hate. How do you get good at copywriting within the recruiting space?
Practice, reps. It's a muscle. Find someone that is good at it and learn from them. That's what I did. That's what we're trying to do for recruiters as well. Like you have to admit what you are really good at and what you don't know. And being able to see the power of like, if I learn this skill, like what could that do to open the doors to my business, right? You have to understand the value in it first before you get good at it. Because if you're just doing something because someone told you to do it, like how motivated are you really going to be to keep with it, right? And when I learned about copywriting in 2018, I was like, wow, like this is really like getting me to draw into the post, into the product. Like this is powerful. Like could I do this? Like, what could I do this with? Right. And getting good at writing. Because we're recruiters, we're talkers. We're like, oh, we can fix everything with a call and a conversation and all that. And it's like, yeah, that is one way, but you can only talk to so many people at one time. Right. And so copywriting and looking at it is like, I can get the message that I want to get through in a call with a candidate and a prospect or a client prospect or hiring manager, but I can get thousands of eyeballs on it. Like that's the power number one of copywriting as a recruiter, right? Because I hear recruiters be like, well, like it's taking time away. If I'm writing, like that's not actually recruiting. Well, if you're just posting random Google articles and memes and all that and not adding any value or relevance to your market, then yes, you probably shouldn't be posting content. It's probably going to hinder your brand. But if you're entertaining, and I would say just don't be boring, right? Be entertaining, but to the business problems that people are facing, right? And just add in that value. And so like that's the first way to start. And then you can look at your headlines and how to format things and the right length of a post and the topics and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But you really got to wrap your head around like you're trying to get your message out of like kind of who you are, that passion that recruiters are always talking about. Like, man, if they had just talked to this candidate, if they had just not undersold, under offered or whatever, right, or anything like that, like share that with your market because people are gonna resonate with that. Don't complain, but just like get in there and just practice. Again, just post and learn from the likes, the comments, you get a lot of them, if you don't get a lot of them, and just like get yourself in the arena first and foremost. And then coaching, like if you get a copywriting coach, like learn from them and implement. That'll expedite the learning curve. But the first step is like you just gotta understand why it can be important and just get yourself in the game.
And I would just want to chime in on this. Don't be afraid to start posting and start writing. And it's okay if you don't get any likes or any really impressions. Like
Yeah.
you have to start.
It's one of the things I always tell people. It's some of the posts that get the most calls booked on my calendar that turn into quality leads and clients. 5 likes, 10 likes, 15. Typically, the posts that get people to buy from you, everyone's nodding their head, but no one wants to like or comment in it because you've hit the nail on the head, but they don't want to admit it publicly, right? And so that's always what I say. Like I actually just messaged a recruiter this morning in our program. He's been recruiting for 30 years, and he had a wonderful post about an interaction he had with a mechanical engineer candidate, and this candidate gets 20 emails a day. She ignores all of them, but she connected with him, and he was like, "Why'd you reply to me of all people?" She's like, "Well, you didn't try to pitch me right away. Like you wanted to get to know me first." And that's what we always teach recruiters is like just aim to like learn your audience and get to know your audience and talk to the people that you are going to resonate with. Don't worry about the people that aren't going to resonate with you because we get so caught up in, well, what if they don't like my message? I'm like, well, what message is going to get the right people that you do want to talk to and connect with, right? And focus on that with your messaging and your content. And you'd be surprised. LinkedIn is full of just content lurkers, right? The likes, the engagement, all that. I've talked to people. I've worked with influencer accounts and all that. It's a lot of times it's more headache than it's worth, right? You'd rather get talk to the 100 people, the 1,000 people that are going to resonate with your message. Those will pay all the bills, right? Don't focus on the millions.
I always joke around with people when I talk about the podcast. It's like I'll post like the latest podcast link on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and it's like 2 likes. But then I hop on the actual analytics side. I'm like, oh, we're right now averaging 8,000 monthly downloads. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yep. It's amazing. It's the testament to just like there's something like you just put it out there and you're just you. And I think it's clear that you're like having a good time and you're authentic about it. And you don't have to be, this is another key point. Like You just have to show up. You don't have to be polarizing, right? Because what you're doing, Ben, is enough value, and it's clearly like you're very good at what you do, right? Excellent what you do. So you don't have to brag about it, or you just talk about what you're working on, and that alone is amazing for people. Like there's a ton of value there, and that's what I try to tell all the other recruiters in my program is like there's enough in what you're doing day to day. You don't have to be polarizing. You don't have to talk about politics or social issues or anything else. Like just talk about the problems you're solving and what you're kind of seeing, and people will resonate. The right people will resonate with you. And it's a big aha moment for a lot of recruiters because they're seeing all these people go viral and say crazy things and all that. Like, do I have to be that way? I'm like, no, not at all. Like, there's a way to not be boring, but also not be, you don't have to be polarizing, right? You just have to be real because recruiting has so many dynamics and no conversation's the same and no rec is the same and candidate and everything else that there's enough uniqueness in what you're going through that can't be replicated by any other recruiter.
Awesome. 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 Before we jump into the next part, is there any advice or any other things that you want to talk about or on the business development side of the house and winning new work and keeping your pipeline full?
Focus on the prospect in everything you do. And catch yourself when you're speaking in I statements, when you're pitching your company. No one cares. No one cares until they really talk to you and they start to kind of get to know you. Like focus on them. Open-ended questions, dig into the conversation. Don't be afraid of your inbox. That's what I always tell people. Don't try to jump on a call with everyone immediately. Embrace the conversation in the inbox, and you will have a much higher rate of quality calls. Like much higher rate. Like just embrace just getting to know someone. And yeah, it can feel like some work, but the quality is going to be there. And that's really what you want is the quality. Because I know recruiters that have 100 signed contracts and it means nothing to them because they hate their life. They're running around. They're not feeling like a valued partner, right? And the way to do that is just to give and serve. And you got to have boundaries, right? You got to know what you stand for and everything else. But you also have to be able to just ask open-ended questions and listen and then trust your recruiting knowledge, experience, instincts to like take that conversation in the right way. And you don't have to overpromise, right? You can be just casual, and people, if you give them the forum, they will tell you everything you need to know and just get comfortable with that. Right? Stop trying to control every part of the process. Just get comfortable and open in the conversation.
Now, I want to kind of talk about you mentioned about somebody that you know that has 100 signed contracts. Almost every single top biller that has come on the podcast at $500 to $1.5 million a year, they're not spread thin with 100 different contracts.
Right.
They've gone deep on what we call on like quality accounts.
Yeah. It's everything. Now, does it take work to get there? Yeah, it does. Right? And you have to be intentional. You have to take a step back and reverse engineer. All those top billers, typically they reverse engineer, like what do they want their life to look like and their work day, right? And their day to day. And I thought that's what Michael Cox's story was so powerful because he had that infrastructure set up. So when some crazy hurdles came his way, like he had those relationships to fall back on. And that's what everyone talks about, right? You talk to elderly people, what do they say? It's relationships are the things that matter. And like get good at building relationships. If you're not good at it or don't understand, that should be your main focus if you're a recruiter. And how to build rapport, right? How to build rapport quickly and get people to buy in and to confide in you, right? And to know that it's about them. They're the ones changing jobs. They're the ones hiring, and they're going to be training this employee. Like you're just connecting the dots. It's not about you. And that's what I hear. And like, and all those top billers have recognized that. Like they're just trying to help bridge the communication, and they're handling the logistics, and people know that they have their back, that they're going to come through, and that they're trying to make the best match possible. And if you do that, if you have 5 clients at all times that you're doing that with, which is not a crazy number, right? Each of them can give you what, 100, 300,000 in billing every year. That's how you get your 500,000 to 1.5 million for a billing desk, right? Like that's it, right? And you can reach out to hundreds of people per week on LinkedIn and impact with content and everything else. So if you reverse engineer that, and it gives you more time to just focus on getting better at building relationships, right? And really always being able to show up in a timely manner. That's what they're all doing. They just put in the legwork on the front end and they didn't expect results in a week. They're like, I'm building this business for 3, 5, 10 years out. Right? Like that's the key.
Awesome. Now I'm excited about flipping over the next part of our conversation, the quick
Yeah.
fire questions.
Let's do it.
So, what advice would you give to a brand new recruiter that's just starting off in the recruiting industry in 2023?
Get your reps as soon as possible. Be just on the phones all the time. Figure everything out about your market, right? If you kind of identified a market you want to get at, and it doesn't have to be super niche down in the beginning, right? But set up a system. It can be lean and mean, right? You only need a couple tools that can cost you $200 a month to supercharge your outreach on LinkedIn and just get on the phone with everyone. It doesn't matter if you don't have any recs to work on. Just there's so many other ways that you can add value to a candidate or a client beyond just like, hey, I have the perfect role for you, right? Like, give them resume feedback, LinkedIn feedback, how to present themselves like the best way possible to companies, like all the other things, and just learn, dig in, ask open-ended questions, and get on the phone, talk to 30, 40, 50 people a week, and then start to kind of narrow it down. Okay, like who of this do I vibe with, that's really looking, that's like ready to make a move right now. I understand why they're looking to move, all those things, right? Like understand and then work with the people that are most urgently looking to move and then put them in front of clients, post content about it, and, kind of use the candidates to leverage bringing in more business, right? If you're just kind of starting from scratch, but you got to get on the phones as much as possible, first and
I
foremost.
think,
Yeah.
and I love that you say that because I think that's one of the fear that a lot of new recruiters have is the phone, the scary thing in the corner of
Yeah.
your desk.
Yeah. And people are surprised when they hear me say that because, like, oh, you're the digital guy. You want to automate and do everything socially and not talk to people. I'm like, no, I want to systemize the top of the funnel so I can have more quality conversations. I want every call I have every single day to make sense for both parties, myself and the other party. It's just like, yep, we know why we're here, and there's just like this is a really valuable use of our time, right? And it's really easy to give away your time without meaning to in recruiting and in coaching. And so, like in the beginning, just get on the phone so you can kind of figure out what that schedule looks like and what conversations do make sense for you to have more of. And it becomes pretty obvious, like pretty quickly, like who you should be talking to more of and who you shouldn't. And that's okay. It doesn't mean either party's bad. It's just being real with yourself. Like, okay, like I should be talking to software developers all day, every day. Great. Like you hone in on that and you do that through a bunch of phone calls and that's great. And it just makes it more refined. So once you refine it, you can then be consistent.
Absolutely love that. Same question, but for experienced recruiters. What advice would you give them to be successful and keep on seeing success?
Never stop learning. Just it's you can always learn. I love the recruiters that are in my program that have been doing this 30 years and they're just like I got to learn the digital stuff. Right. And they're so good at recruiting. I mean, they were doing this when they had to fax resumes over and everything else. And they're just like, I'll figure out Sales Navigator. I'll figure out Chat GPT. Like, throw it at me, right? And like learn. And I'm here to learn from you, right? Someone that's 20 years younger than them, and just like teach me. Like, teach me what you know, and I want to incorporate it to what I already do really well. I love that. Like, it's such a good attitude. I think it keeps people young in a sense, right? Just to always challenge your brain. It's like, hey, I've had a great success, but like, how can I leverage what I know and maybe make my life a little easier? Spend more time with family and, kind of do more of the things that matter to me. And as things kind of change. And so I see people set up outreach systems and post content and I think candidates in a really tough market to get a hold of, like they're reaching back out and they're increasing their response rate and they're like, oh, I can breathe. Like I can go on vacation and know that I have things working for me and I have content scheduled out and it's just so nice. I love that for experienced recruiters. They're the ones, I mean, because they have such the body of work already, they get such good results so quick in working with us because and sometimes they think like, oh, what can you teach me? Like I already know recruiting. It's like this is this is communication, the people business, right? It's human nature. Like if it was easy, right? Like all relationship, no, there'd be no divorces or anything like that, right? It's just like it's hard. Like you got to keep up, and culture changes, and society, and the economy, and everything else. Like you always got to be learning and invested and having kind of your ear to the ground. And so if you're an experienced recruiter, just don't rest on your laurels. Right? Just always look to how can you leverage the great work that you're doing into making parts of your business just easier and systemize them a little bit more. It's kind of always do more. And that could be whether you're a lifestyle recruiter business or when you're trying to scale up, right? And become $100 million agency.
Definitely great advice. I'm not going to lie, some of that systematizing stuff, we've been able to just on a whim take multiple trips to France because of
Yeah.
that setup.
Yeah. It, it's amazing, right? And that's because you have the confidence, right? I mean, I built this program. I got married, went on a honeymoon, got we're having a kid in any time now. Like all those things as I built a business from the ground up because I had the right systems. No, it's just like you, and it's huge. It's an absolute game changer. And if you haven't really experienced that for yourself, like you owe it to yourself because the other side is wonderful.
All right. Is there a book that's had a huge impact on your career?
Yeah, it's it's an interesting question, and my answer is the Bible. It's I didn't start reading until about 4 years ago, and it just tied together so many things in my life, and I think one of the and so many just unanswered questions, and what's been really interesting to me, and I think the way it ties to recruiting is there's a couple lines that in the New Testament Jesus talks about. It goes, I didn't come to bring peace on earth. I came to bring us, a sword, right? But he also says, forgive your brother 70 times, 70 times. And to me, the way that it applies to recruiting and where it helped me build a business and start posting on social media is I have to have boundaries in my life, first and foremost, especially in recruiting, right? With prospects, clients, internal employees. But you also have to be able to quickly let go and not hold on to resentment, right? And you have to be able to forgive fast and forgive for yourself. And so, because then I read, all these other business books and all that, they take a lot of the themes from this, and it just helped me. It just helped articulate kind of what I was feeling. It's like, okay, I gotta have boundaries, but I also gotta kind of lead with love in a sense and forgiveness, but and be able to forgive quick and move forward, especially in recruiting and coaching. It's critical, right? I don't have time or energy to hold on to the negativity or resentment. But we also got to know what a good rec is and what a bad rec is and be able to communicate that at the same time, right? We got to know when someone is a fit with our team and when they're not a fit with our team, right? It doesn't have to come from a negative place or trying to build confrontation, but just know you got to be able to swim in the gray area, right? And life is full of gray areas. There's not as much black and white as we're led to believe. And that, for some reason, that just reading it just crystallized all that stuff for me.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite tech tool at the moment?
I, I mean, ChatGPT is fun, but my favorite tool is and always will be, I think, Sales Navigator. I love it. It's an imperfect tool, so I love to learn it and make it work for me and for our clients. With people who use all the LinkedIn tools, and you can come to us. We're using any tool, but for the price point, and if you add some automation tools, it's an absolute game changer for business, building connections, getting out in front of your market, building your ecosystem quickly. It's $99 a month, and it's a game changer. And you can use really any, say, LinkedIn automation tool, or whatever, in combination with it. And it's an amazing way to build your network quickly. ChatGPT is fun, but that's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Well, you've been in the recruiting desk, you've been in the account manager desk, you're now in the coaching desk. You're talking to recruiters on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What do you see in the future of recruiting?
I'm really bullish on the future of recruiting for the people that know how to build rapport and build relationships and maintain those. Because the tech tools are making great recruiters into super recruiters. But they're also thinning the herd a little, in terms of the recruiters that are more transactional focused, whether on purpose or not, right? I think it's making people wake up and be like, well, what value do I really bring as a recruiter, right? What we talked about at the beginning. And the ones that figure that out and know where they can use certain tech tools and AI to make everything, all kind of the tedious parts of the business quicker, but still have everything funnel to building the relationship, talking to the right people, giving feedback in a timely manner, good or not so good, right? That is, I think that's going to be huge. And I do see more of, and especially with COVID and working remote and all that, like companies are there's some real battles. And I think the recruiters that can kind of lead the way for companies and candidates, like I get that a lot has changed, but this is kind of like this is what the goal we have to work towards, right? We have to clean up the interview process. You have to deal with the salary and the inflation and all that question, right? You have to deal with the schedule. Like, let's figure it out together, right? If you can have that plus the right tools, those are the recruiters and recruiting processes that are going to win, and they'll be better than they've ever been.
Awesome. Now, you've dealt with a lot of high level billers and a lot of search firm owners. What does it take to be a top level biller or a top level search firm owner?
Again, building that rapport, right? Understanding people, listening. You got to work hard, but I've seen a lot of unsuccessful recruiters that work hard, right? Busy doesn't mean productivity. And so you're gonna work hard in recruiting no matter what. But the ones that really get it, they can pick up the nuance on a phone call, and they know how to just dig, whether it's with clients or candidates, right? It's just like they pick up on something that doesn't sound right, and they don't let it go away, right? They dig in on that. Like that's the skill. That's like the either you got it or you don't got it in recruiting, and everything tech content everything all that stuff should be centered around like getting the most out of that skill, right? And just picking up on things of like, wait, is that really the salary someone wants? Is that really the role? Are they taking it? Are they taking that role just so they can look for something else and they can just pay the bills right now, right? Like all those things. And like, are they really looking to hire someone, or they just need to have a job posted, or is it a nice to have, right? Like that's what they have in spades, and they do a really good job creating systems, taking notes, being able to follow back up on people they talked to 6 months ago, right? And incorporating that skill so they have enough of those systems. And then they're able, as they're scaling their team, they're able to instill that in their team, right? And pick the recruiters and find the right people that have that, right? And that's what I see as the difference. Like it's just that it's that nuance on the call to be able to call it out in the moment. Like, and then if you can figure out how to train and scale that, you're golden.
Actually, it kind of opens up another question I want to have for you is when it comes to, scaling your team and scaling your firm, do you have any advice?
I don't know if we have enough time for all that, but I have plenty. I have plenty of thoughts on that. It's one of my favorite questions because I've been seeing it, and we've had some of our clients ask us for help in building out their team. So we've made placements in the last year for some of our clients, like recruiter to recruiter, and these systems have completely changed what I recommend people looking for in an agency recruiter. It's because you have the systems. I can help build someone's book of business, candidate or client side, much quicker with some of the tools and the social selling and everything that we can teach. So it really is just look for someone that gets it, that can kind of adapt on the fly. You'll know within a month or two, right? You shadow their screening calls, their sourcing, kind of how they're thinking about it, if they get it or they don't get it, right? And you got to be able to kind of cut the cord quick on someone that doesn't. But you're looking more for the intangibles, right? Does this person like do they listen? Do they learn from their mistakes quickly? Because that's recruiting, right? We're gonna make a ton of mistakes, or I forgot to ask that question, or do this, or we got to follow back up, and all that. But do they learn quickly, or do they make excuses, right? So look for that every step of the interview process. When you're doing outreach, right? Do they understand like the potential in this role? They do it the right way, right? Are they quick to outsource blame? And you can pick that up in interviewing and kind of in the first few weeks. Right? What I've seen with the recruiters that worked out, that ones we placed, they took the system and they ran with it. And they're like, great, I don't have to spend all this time sourcing. I can systemize that, and I'm on the phones all the time. And I'm just gonna go crazy with submittals until my manager tells me like, this is a good submittal, this is a bad one. Okay, I'm gonna do all good ones. And then same thing with interviews. And it's just like you just go into attack mode, right? And I love recruiters that way. They're just gonna throw stuff at the wall and like refine it from there. Like that's the trait you're looking for in a recruiter. because you can build the rest of the systems. You can get them on the phones with candidates way quicker nowadays, build a social brand, but those are the ones that really have success. Like you're just looking for that tenacity, and it has nothing to do. I've seen some of the best recruiters be super soft spoken, but they're just tenacious, right? So like just pick up on, you're looking for that because the rest of the stuff you can get them the reps quick, but like you can't train that.
Awesome. And this is actually one of my favorite questions. Like everything that you know now, you've learned, you've experienced, if you can go back and talk to Clark when he first started his recruiting career, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, take care of yourself first every day. Like make sure that you're good because it's recruiting is easy to worry about everyone else and then your stuff falters and it's really hard to take care of other people if you're not in a good spot, right? And I think just taking care of yourself, mentally, physically, spiritually, prioritizing that, right? The best version of you is the best version of serving others. And and I talk about that with recruiters all the time. I'm like, if you're working on a bad rec, speak up, tell your manager, tell the client, like figure out a way to talk about it. Like if you're just going to waste your time and spin your wheels, you're going to get demoralized. You're going to not feel good about yourself, right? So like take care of yourself, know your boundaries and those things can change, but you got to figure that out first so you can really help clients and candidates, right? And it's a battle and it's been a battle for me for years, kind of just articulating some of that, but when I've leaned into it, it's made everything better. And I would just start, that's what I would tell myself 10 years ago. Like, don't ever stray away from that because doing that will let you be the best version of yourself for other people.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners before I let you go?
Man, there's a ton I could share. We've done a lot of talking. This has been great. Um, I I think the one last thing. I mean, beyond taking care of yourself, like have fun. Like this is a grind. Like have fun with it. Celebrate the wins. There's not always too many, but just have a good time. Have gratitude. Really be able to take a step back and just. And half the time I'm talking to myself when I talk about when I post things or say stuff. It's just like make sure like there's lot of good stuff in this life, and there's a lot of darkness, but if you can just focus on being the light and just like what can you bring to the table, right? Like, and you can always control how you bring, what you bring to the table, right? Is being the light and making, someone's day, just hearing them out and all that stuff. Like I think being the light in all this craziness is super powerful. And it's brought me more, focusing on that has brought me more blessings that I could ever count, right? Just kind of like, just not waiting around for someone else to kind of bring the good energy, just like bring it yourself. And people resonate with that. And it covers up a lot of mistakes and it gives you a lot of goodwill.
Awesome. Now, for people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, reach out to me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. I'm very active on there. If you got any questions, feel free to book a call if you're interested, in the program. I got my Calendly link on my LinkedIn profile. We can certainly talk about that. Or if you just have kind of questions in general, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. You can or email me. I'm sure we'll have my email somewhere on here, but it's Clark at digitalrecruiter.io. But yeah, reach out anytime. Love. Obviously, I'm in the people business, so I'd love to hear from you. Yeah,
Awesome. I'll have your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and
cool.
also we'll in the show notes. I'll also have like you can sign up for the Recruiter Podcast newsletter, so you know when things actually come out, rather than me just quietly posting things on
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
absolutely, absolutely. I love that.
Awesome. Well, Clark, definitely thank you so much for coming on the
Mhm.
podcast. Business development 2023 is one of the most important topics that I have been asked about talking about. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and how to level yourself up this year.
Ben, I appreciate you, man. You're awesome. This has been super fun. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. And to the listeners, until next time, guys.